They put a black woman in.
They put a black woman in this house.
You a coward. You a coward.
Each day, her mom would text me and be like, "Hey, you see my daughter?"
Pause. Let me stop you there. You heard her phone going off in her room that night, but ain't nobody hear her screaming when she was getting hit in her face. But you can hear her phone.
I didn't hear nothing from her.
She was face down. One hand was in the fist and one hand was like this. While she was face down, her face was in. But nobody has answered.
My sister was innocent. She was innocent. I want my sister back. I want my sister back.
In the early hours of January 2023, an African-American woman living with 9 men was found dead. A mother had been desperately trying to reach her 31-year-old daughter for days, but when all attempts failed, she turned to the building's maintenance man. But what he found behind that door would haunt him forever. Upon entering the room, the maintenance man was met with a gruesome sight. There, lying face down on the floor, was the lifeless body of a woman. One hand was clenched tightly in a fist, the other outstretched as if reaching for something. Her face was badly bruised, and her clothing had been partially removed. But the most unsettling revelation was yet to come. The woman had been living with 9 men in the apartment, and when questioned, each of them denied knowing anything about what had happened. As the investigation unfolded, the question echoed in everyone's minds: what really happened to this woman? And why were these men so quick to distance themselves from her death? And heartbreakingly, this story isn't the first of its kind we've shared. Do you remember the case of 24-year-old Nicholas Anderson, a young man full of warmth and dreams for the future? But tragically, his skeletal remains were found after a dating app meeting in Florida.
It was hard. Yesterday was very hard for us. Once we got the information that it was him, we had to call our family members to let them know that it was him.
If you missed that case, I'll link it at the end of this video. It's one that still haunts us. Now, let's look at the life and tragic death of Sheniqua Nickerson Mays. 31-year-old Sheniqua Nickerson Mays was born on May 29, 1992, in Cleveland, Ohio. From a young age, Sheniqua was known for her kind-hearted nature and nurturing spirit. She was a woman who put her family first, always prioritizing the needs of her loved ones above all else. She grew up in a community that valued hard work and strong family bonds, qualities that would shape her life and aspirations. It was these values that would soon guide her toward a life-changing decision. After completing her high school education, Sheniqua set her sights on a career in healthcare. She earned her GED in 2012, a significant accomplishment that marked the beginning of her journey toward becoming a nurse. Her dream was to care for others, and she knew that nursing would allow her to make a real difference in people's lives. Soon, her hard work began to push her one step closer to her ultimate goal. By 2013, Sheniqua had earned her nursing license, and she chose to specialize in home care. This decision was a reflection of her compassionate nature, as she wanted to provide comfort to those who were most vulnerable, individuals who needed care in the familiar surroundings of their own homes. But beyond all that, her personal life was also beginning to flourish. Alongside her professional achievements, Sheniqua's personal life was full of love and fulfillment. In 2013, she married Lawrence Mays, the man who would become her steadfast partner in life. Their relationship was built on love, mutual respect, and unwavering support for one another. Lawrence stood by Sheniqua's side through every challenge and triumph, and together they created a loving home for their 3 children. Sheniqua was a devoted mother, constantly striving to provide the best for her children and to ensure they had every opportunity for success. Her nurturing qualities extended beyond her career, and she was deeply involved in her children's lives, always making sure they felt loved, supported, and safe. The same devotion made her a source of inspiration. Sheniqua's dedication to her family and her career made her a role model in her community. Whether she was caring for her parents, nurturing her children, or supporting her husband, she did so with grace and kindness. Her ability to balance a demanding career with the responsibilities of motherhood was a testament to her strength and resilience. But tragically, Sheniqua's life was abruptly cut short under mysterious and still unexplained circumstances. On the morning of August 31st, 2023, Sheniqua's mother, Nikia Nickerson, became deeply concerned after not hearing from her daughter for several days. Sheniqua, who had been living in a boarding house on Alack Road in Cleveland's UKC Green neighborhood, had always been in regular contact with her mother, but recently, her phone calls and messages had gone unanswered. This sudden silence was unusual, especially for Sheniqua, who was a devoted mother and kept in close touch with her family. Nikia's worry began to grow as the hours passed, and despite repeated attempts to reach her daughter, there was no response. Feeling increasingly uneasy and unsure of what to do, Nikia reached out to the maintenance man of the boarding house, hoping he could check on Sheniqua, but the maintenance man would reveal something disturbing. The maintenance man informed Nikia that he had heard Sheniqua's phone ringing, but he hadn't seen her. Nikia, growing more anxious and with no other option, told him that he needed to enter the room so she could find out if her daughter was there. Despite hearing the phone ringing for days, he hadn't checked on Sheniqua, and Nikia's fear for her daughter's safety was escalating.
On the 31st, August 31st, I said, you're going to have to get in there so I can see if my daughter's in there. You heard her phone, but you never checked on her.
But what he would find when he arrived at Sheniqua's room would haunt him forever. Upon entering, he discovered Sheniqua's lifeless body lying face down on the floor. Her one hand was clenched tightly in a fist, while the other lay outstretched beside her. Her face was badly bruised and her clothing partially removed.
She was face down. One hand was in the fist and one hand was like this. While she was face down, her face was smashed in. But nobody has answers.
It was clear that she had been in some sort of violent struggle. The scene was horrific, and it was apparent that Sheniqua hadn't passed away peacefully. There were no signs of a struggle outside the room, but the state of her body told a story of violence. The more the maintenance man examined the room, the clearer it became that Sheniqua's death wasn't a natural one, but the authorities would be faced with a chilling mystery. The authorities were quickly called to the scene. When they arrived, they found signs that the room had been disturbed. Furniture was overturned, and there were indications that Sheniqua had fought back against her attacker, but ultimately, she had been overpowered. What investigators found next would change the entire course of the case. Sheniqua had been living in the boarding house with 9 men and 1 other woman, but no one seemed to know anything about what happened. Despite being in a house full of people, no one had heard anything unusual or offered any insight into what might have transpired. The brutality of the crime seemed out of place in the usually quiet neighborhood, and the question echoed through everyone's minds. What happened to Sheniqua in the hours leading up to her tragic death?
So a black woman died in this house full of men, full of white dudes, young black girl. Her down. She got bruises in her face. Ain't nobody hear nothing. Ain't nobody hear nothing.
But this would only be the beginning of a long investigation with more twists yet to come. A surveillance camera was positioned outside Sheniqua's room, but when the landlord checked the footage, they found several hours of missing footage. According to the landlord, the footage was unavailable or corrupted, raising more questions than answers. How could such an important piece of evidence just vanish? But that wasn't all. The police began their investigation, questioning the other residents of the house. They were shocked to find that Sheniqua had been living in a house with a group of men, some of whom she was close with, yet no one came forward with helpful information about what happened to her or the missing footage. The sense of unease grew as the investigators realized that something was not right. This wasn't just a random accident. It was starting to look like something much more sinister. One of the residents, and the maintenance man named Bobby, claimed to have been Sheniqua's friend.
Did you know that lady who lived here, Sheniqua?
Yes, friend.
Y'all was friends? Yeah? Was you here when she was killed? Don't think about it, man. Was you here when she was killed?
That's the question, bro.
You found her?
Found her.
You found her?
So you walked in and found her.
And he insisted that he was the one who had checked on her after her mother reached out. Bobby said that he found her body and immediately called the police, but he also raised suspicions by stating that he didn't hear anything the night before. Sheniqua's family was growing increasingly frustrated with a lack of answers. Antoine Tolber, a member of the community organization New Era Cleveland, stepped in to help push for a thorough investigation. He quickly pointed out that the layout of the house made it impossible for anyone to enter or leave without being seen on camera.
We on camera right here. Anybody came through this door should be on camera. Anybody came through this door should be on camera.
Her unit, there is no way that you can get in or out this house from her entrance without being seen on camera. So that means that someone had to take a separate entrance. Someone that knows the layout of the house has to take a separate entrance to stay off camera.
But this raised more questions. Was someone deliberately avoiding the camera, possibly entering through a hidden entrance to avoid detection? Something else would add to the mystery. A piece of drywall in the boarding house had reportedly been removed, suggesting that someone had used a secret route to access Sheniqua's room. It was becoming increasingly clear that something had gone horribly wrong in that house, and the people living there were either unwilling or too frightened to talk.
Allegedly, there's a piece of drywall that can be moved to get access to her room.
The investigation was complicated by the lack of physical evidence and the confusion surrounding the security footage. Despite the red flags, the police had no solid leads or concrete evidence to make an arrest. But the focus quickly turned to the maintenance man, Bobby. He was the one who had discovered Sheniqua's body. His involvement in the case came under scrutiny, especially after he provided contradictory statements regarding his actions the night before. Bobby claimed he hadn't heard anything unusual, yet he also admitted to hearing Sheniqua's phone ringing inside her room.
He said, hey, I'm cooking. If you want something to eat, hit me up. Nothing. But I could hear her phone going off in her room that night. So I was like, well, each day her mom would text me and be like, hey, have you seen my daughter?
Pause. Let me stop you there. You heard her phone going off in her room that night, but ain't nobody hear her screaming when she was getting hit in her face? But you can hear her phone?
I didn't hear nothing from her.
Leading investigators to believe that something didn't add up. How could he hear the phone, but not the screams of a woman fighting for her life? The police were waiting for the results of forensic tests, including the toxicology report, which could potentially offer more clues as to what had happened in the days leading up to Sheniqua's death. Was it possible that she had been drugged or incapacitated in some way? Or was this a case of foul play that involved someone close to her? As the investigation dragged on, Sheniqua's family was left in a state of disbelief.
My sister was innocent. She was innocent. I want my sister back. I want my sister back.
Her mother, Sheniqua, couldn't understand how her daughter, a loving mother of 3, could have met such a violent end in a place that was supposed to offer her safety.
Hey, TikTok friends. I just came on here to let y'all know that me and my oldest son found my oldest daughter that was 31 years old in her house. She didn't call me for one day and I was concerned. Somebody hurt my child. I'm going through a lot. Send prayers for me. I've been through a terrible lot this year. If you just look at my pinned post.
Sheniqua had worked hard for her children, ensuring they had what they needed. And to think that her life had been taken under such suspicious circumstances was almost too much for the family to bear. Sheniqua and Sheniqua's family members began to speak out publicly, demanding justice for their loved one. Community members, too, rallied behind them, showing support as they sought answers. Antoine Tolber, the activist from the New Era Cleveland, was among those leading the charge for justice. He pointed out the disparities in the way women, especially black women, were treated by law enforcement when they went missing or were found dead under mysterious circumstances. According to Antoine, the lack of urgency from authorities was a clear indication of the systemic disregard for black women's lives. Sheniqua's family, determined not to let her death be swept under the rug, continued to apply pressure on the police and demanded transparency in the investigation.
It's heavy on my heart, for real, and it's just sad. Like, we should be able to live our lives without being scared and being killed every other day. Like, I just don't understand why they can't just get it together and arrest the police. Like, that's all we asking for in justice.
They knew that someone in that boarding house had the answers they needed, but no one was coming forward. The fear and secrecy surrounding the residents of that house only heightened the sense of distrust in the process. Her family couldn't understand how someone could have taken Sheniqua's life, especially in a house that she had been living in for a while. The fact that none of the tenants had reported hearing anything raised suspicions about their possible involvement or knowledge of the events. It was becoming clear to them that the investigation was being mishandled, and their frustration was obvious. As the days turned into weeks, the investigation into Sheniqua Nickerson's death showed no sign of significant progress. The police had seized the surveillance footage from the boarding house, but according to some sources, there had been no further updates from authorities on what had been found in the footage. Despite the community's pressure and the public's demand for answers, many felt that the investigation had stalled, and the lack of a solid lead left them wondering if justice for Sheniqua was slipping further away. Authorities had already declared Sheniqua's death as suspicious, but the absence of clear evidence, like forensic results or witness testimony, left many believing that the case might eventually be swept under the rug. Sheniqua's family continued to press for answers, and activists, such as those from New Era Cleveland, remained vocal in their calls for justice. They held meetings, passed out flyers, and maintained a visible presence at police stations and local events, ensuring Sheniqua's story was not forgotten. One of the most significant issues for her family was the apparent lack of urgency from the police. While they had seized the surveillance footage from the boarding house, it remained unclear whether the footage had been analyzed in a way that could potentially uncover key evidence. The fact that there were hours of missing footage only deepened the sense of suspicion around the authorities' handling of the case. Furthermore, the witness statements seemed contradictory. One person said they heard Sheniqua's phone ringing the night before, but no one had heard any signs of struggle or distress, even though Sheniqua's body was found in a state suggesting she had fought for her life. The community surrounding Sheniqua's home was impacted by her death. In a neighborhood where safety should have been a priority, the residents were shaken by the sheer violence of the crime. The fact that Sheniqua had been living in a boarding house with predominantly male residents further complicated matters. Her family, activists, and the broader community were determined to uncover the truth and prevent another woman from experiencing the same fate. On September 11, 2023, just days after Sheniqua's body had been discovered, her family laid her to rest. The funeral was a somber occasion marked by grief and unanswered questions. Those who knew Sheniqua best remembered her as a compassionate and loving woman, always there for her children and the people in her life. As her family gathered to say their final goodbyes, the absence of justice was a heavy weight on their hearts. The funeral was a reminder of the life Sheniqua had lived, a life that had been taken far too soon. She had been a mother, a wife, a friend, and a daughter, and now all of that was gone. The emotional toll of her death was immeasurable for her loved ones, and as they mourned, they also found themselves fighting for answers. The fear that Sheniqua's death might be brushed aside fueled their determination to uncover the truth. Sheniqua Nickerson May's tragic death has left more questions than answers. What happened in that boarding house? Who was responsible for taking her life? The missing footage, the moved drywall, and the contradictions in witness statements all point to something more than just an unfortunate incident. For her family, the pain of losing Sheniqua is compounded by the uncertainty surrounding her death. Was this a case of domestic violence, a crime of passion, or was it something more sinister? Sheniqua had been living in a house full of men, and while she had been close to some of them, the fact that no one could offer useful information raised the possibility that someone in that house was involved. As her mother, Nikia, and the community continue to fight for justice, there is an important message to take from this case: the need for vigilance and accountability. The case of Sheniqua Nickerson May serves as a reminder that no matter how safe an environment may seem, danger can often lurk in the places we least expect. For families, it's essential to stay in touch with loved ones and to be aware of the environments they are in. For those involved in the investigation, it's crucial that no stone be left unturned. The footage from the surveillance camera, which could provide critical evidence, should be thoroughly examined. The landlord's statements regarding the missing footage raise further questions and need to be answered. The community's concerns about the lack of urgency in the investigation should not be ignored. To the authorities, it's time to take a closer look at all the evidence and start holding those who might be responsible accountable. The delay in justice is not just a failure of the system, it's a failure to the victim, her family, and the community that looks up to law enforcement to protect and serve. As we continue to search for answers, we call upon anyone with information to come forward, whether you were a witness to something strange the night of Sheniqua's death or know someone who may have been involved. Your information could be the key to solving this case. What do you think about this? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and if you found this story intriguing, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.